8 p.m. So today we have with us a special speaker. Her name is Disha Mukherjee, and she's a board certified cardiologist from Saratoga. She is in Saratoga Hospital, and she's also a member of Saratoga Medical Group. And also, being a cardiologist, she has so many other things that she has achieved. She's also a founder of the Path to Meditation Mastery, and also, she's Chopra Center certified primordial sound meditation teacher, and she has Heart Math certification in stress, anxiety, and emotional management. And so she's going to be talking about sacredness of physician-patient relationship today. And we have Marilyn Henner. You probably all know her. You've been very regular every week, and she conducts meditation sometimes for us and sometimes speaks. And so she's also a physical therapist from Boston, and she's certified integrative manual therapist, and she has 12 years experience of Raj Yoga meditation. And so she will take us through the meditation experience. And now I would like to welcome Disha Mukherjee. Disha, welcome.
Hello, thank you. So I can just go ahead and start my screen share.
Yes.
All right, hang on 1 second. Bear with me for a second here. I think it should work. There we go. Can you see it all right? Okay, great. And I'm going to move this over. Sorry, my screen is being funny. Okay, thank you so much, Sister Neha, for inviting me to speak today. Actually, it was Sister Kala about a month ago asked me to speak, and I said, well, what do you want me to talk about? She said, whatever you would like. And I said, so I was walking out of Peace Village here near Albany, and I got this download, and it was, this is it. This is where you want to share this message that you've been wanting to share for a really long time. So thank you for allowing me to come here today. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. So I'm going to start with sharing a little bit about my story. This is my family that I grew up in. There's my dad in the middle. He's also Dr. Mukherjee. He's actually a cardiologist, has been for over 50 years, and he's 88 years old and continues to work as one. And there's my sister to my left. I'm all the way on the right there, on the right side of the screen. She's also a cardiologist, Dr. Susie Mukherjee. And then there's my brother there in the back. He's Dr. Swagatam Mukherjee. He is an internist. And there's my mother, the pillar of our family. She is not a physician, but without her, nothing really can happen. So the reason that I show this picture is because medicine has been part of my life since I was born. And I remember being 5 years old, going to the hospital on Sundays with my dad. He was the chief at the VA, and we would go to pick up donuts and for the nurses. And then I would go with him, and I would hang out with the nurses in the nurses station while he rounded on the veterans. And so I was familiar with the hospital, and medicine was a noble profession. It was something that we could be proud to do. This topic of the sacredness of the physician-patient relationship, however, came to me, the awareness of this came to me from being a patient myself, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Okay. So we're going to fast forward a little bit from my 5-year-old stage all the way to through medical school. And at the end of residency, I did my internal medicine residency at Montefiore in the Bronx. And at the end of my 3rd year, I had the great pleasure of marrying the love of my life at the time, my husband, Victor. And as you can see, we have 2 marriage ceremonies there. One is the white dress wedding on the left. because my husband's family is from Kerala and he was raised Christian. And then on the right side, my family is from West Bengal, and we had a Bengali ceremony in one day. It wasn't easy. Maybe some of you who are of Indian background may recognize that this might have caused a little bit of trouble. It certainly did. It took us 5 years of fighting to get to this point. However, by the end of the 5 years, everybody was very happy indeed. And so we managed to make it through, and we were absolutely thrilled to be able to be together. And at the end, after I finished my residency, we moved to Chicago I started my cardiology fellowship there, and Victor, my husband, he started consulting. He is not in medicine either. And so he was flying back and forth from Chicago to New York while I started my fellowship. A year into our marriage, we discussed maybe having children. And he had always said to me, you know, sweetie, I see us with two little girls. He always would say that. And so we decided to try, and I went off the pill, and boom, in a month I was pregnant, and we were ecstatic. We were really, really excited. And we had 2 baby showers. We had her name up in the room. We had all the clothes, the crib, everything. And on this day, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, 2008, we were going in for an induction. And the reason that we were going in for an induction is because the doctors thought that the baby was growing a little small. I don't know if you can tell, I look kind of tall here in this video, but I'm actually only 4'10", so I'm quite petite. And so they thought that the baby was measuring a little small. And so they thought, you know what, why don't we go ahead and induce you a little early, 39 weeks and 2 days. The baby's well baked. Let's do this. I was excited. I was like, absolutely. I was suffering from sciatic pain. I had gained 40 pounds. I was like, please, let's get this baby out. And I had met many friends, and you know, my mother delivered my brother overdue at the age of 45, and she was induced, and he was great. And so I really didn't have any concerns about anything going in. One of the nurses that worked in the cath lab with me had, like the week before, went in for an induction at 6 a.m., had the baby at noon, and boom, done. It was done. So I was quite carefree. And so there I am. So my sister flew in, my best friend Rini from residency, she's also a physician, she came in. And so it was the 4 of us really like hunkering down and let's get through this labor. And there I am on the yoga ball with sipping my hot tea. And it was kind of, we were going nowhere fast. Like nothing was happening on that Cinco de Mayo. And so the hours passed by, and in the evening, nothing had really happened. And so my doctor, I called my doctor, and I was like, hey, are you going to come see me? They want to stick this Foley bulb thing in me. And I was terrified of pain. I didn't have a birth plan. I wasn't doing water births or home births or anything like that. I was just like, I just thought I needed somebody to catch the baby. So she said, let them do what they're going to do. Okay, fine. That night, they did what they had to do. And in the morning, she finally came and saw me, and she said, oh, okay, now you're finally dilated 4 to 5 centimeters. This is great. I'm going to break your water, and let's get this show on the road. All right, awesome. And so this is the morning of May 6th now, so no Cinco de Mayo, but May 6th, and there's my husband and I had the epidural, so I was in the bed, couldn't walk. And the whole day kind of went by. Between 4 and 5 o'clock, the doctor came and said, all right, you're 10 centimeters, you're ready, so let's push. And so we started pushing, and within like 5 minutes or so, she used a vacuum. She pulled out the vacuum. She said, I'm going to use a vacuum on the head. You might hear it pop off. No big deal. The baby looks great. Vacuum popped off. All right. She used it again. Popped off. And she's like, I don't know why the baby's not coming out. And she said, well, we might have to go to C-section. And I said to her, well, have I pushed long enough? Because it had literally been like 5 to 7 minutes. And from my history and knowledge of other people doing this, I'd heard stories of people pushing for like hours to deliver their baby. And so I was, like, really, C-section already? We only been doing this for 5 minutes. And so she said, well, okay, you know what? Why don't we go ahead and turn you into a different position? Maybe the baby's not positioned right. And so she put me into this thing called what she called the Texas roll, and she put me on the side. And so she walked out of the room, and the four of us were sitting there, my husband, Rini, my sister, and we're just kind of ho-humming, waiting. And she comes into the room, or she stands at the doorway of the room, and she says, Disha, I'm writing in the chart that you're adamant about a vaginal delivery. And I said, hold on. And we all were like, wait a second. And I said, I'm not adamant about anything. And she said, all right. And then she left, came back, said, your baby looks great. Let's keep pushing. So we pushed for a little longer. She tried to use the vacuum again. This time it didn't hold. And then finally she said, Disha, listen, I don't know why she's not coming out. Baby looks great. We're going to have to go to C-section. I'm like, all right. I'm crying. I've never had surgery before. It'd been a long 36 hours by this time. And so here's my husband there all geared up to go into the C-section room. And there I am with my bonnet on and with underneath my sterile drape. And so we're in the OR, and we're waiting, she's doing her thing. The surgeon is. And finally I hear a little, wah, and then the doctor says, this baby needs to be resuscitated. And that was it. I heard this silence. And I said to my husband, I was like, why can't I hear her crying? Why can't I hear her crying? And he's like, oh, they took her, she's behind that door. I can't see anything or hear anything. And then a little time later, there was somebody standing at the head here of my, surgical table there. And it was a resident, it was a pediatric resident. And she was like crying. And I said, what is going on? And she just kept saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I was like, oh my God, what happened? Is she dead? What happened? And she said, no, she's in the NICU. And I said, oh, okay. That's great. Like, I had a friend, who had her baby in the NICU for a week, no problem. And I asked her, I said, well, is she going to be okay? Like, is she going to be delayed or something? And she said, well, there's a high chance of that. I didn't really think about anything at that time. I was like, she's out, she's in NICU, I can't wait to see her. Can't wait to hold her skin to skin, because that was my goal. Holding her skin to skin, I knew was really important for bonding. And there she was. There is our little Rhea. And what I didn't know at the time, because my doctor kept telling me she didn't know what happened, was that she, in fact, had a large bleed into her subgaleal space. And so when she was born, she was severely anemic, and they had to do CPR on her for 20 minutes. So there she is. And so then the neonatologist came and saw as hours are going by, and he said, we'd like to transfer her to another hospital because they're doing this research on this cool cap therapy that's supposed to help with like inflammation in the brain in situations like this. I didn't really know what the situation like this was at the time, but I was like, well, if it's gonna help her, okay. And I looked at my husband, who'd been at my side the entire time, and I looked at him and I said, you have to go with her. I'm like, we're her family. You have to go with her. Take my sister with you. My sister is med peds trained. I said, you take her with you. You guys go with her in the ambulance. Rini, my best friend, she'll stay with me. I'll start pumping, getting the colostrum going. You guys go. And so they went. And by her second day of life, my sister and my husband brought me an EEG report from the other hospital. So we were in two separate hospitals now, and it read electrical silence. And initially I couldn't believe it. I was like, did they put the leads on? Did they plug it in? Did they plug the machine in? I couldn't believe that something that my husband and I had created with our love, that this could happen. And I was only on my second day after C-section, and the doctors let me leave for 8 hours to go spend some time with her. And on our way there, my husband graciously said, sweetie, I want this to be a good visit. When I'm next to her, there's nowhere I'd rather be than be right next to her. But we can't keep her alive like this. But I want this to be a good visit for you. And so I went. My parents flew in, my brother flew in from New York to Chicago. My father-in-law, my brother-in-law, they all flew in. And so this is the first time that I got to really see my little girl. And there's Rini at the bottom left there, my sister at the top right, and my parents at the bottom right corner. And I remember looking up at the nurses and doctors outside the NICU, and they were staring at me, and some of them were crying. And I looked at them and I said, look, I know what you're thinking. I'm a physician, I'm a clinician. I have stood in your shoes. In fact, during my residency, my co-residents would make fun of me because I would try to make everybody DNR. And because I just didn't like the thought of keeping people alive on machines or doing crazy measures when it was clear that a soul needed to leave the body. But when those nurses were looking at me, I said, I know what you're thinking, and I've stood in your shoes. But right now, I need you to believe in a miracle with me. The cool cap treatment therapy is 72 hours. Let her do the protocol. We keep people alive on machines for 30 days sometimes. Can't my daughter have a chance? She just got here. And so that's what we did. So we waited. So on the final day of being in the hospital, for me, since I had a C-section, it was a 4-day hospitalization. They called me from Ria's hospital and they said, her heart had stopped. We resuscitated her. And, basically asking me, what do you want us to do? Do you want to keep her full code? What do you want to do? And I said, look, I haven't even held her yet. I'm coming. The doctor, my doctor, had come into my room and she was like, I don't know what happened. I have no idea what happened. And I'm like, it's okay. Things happen in medicine. Of course, I'm not going to sue you or anything, but I want to know what happened. Since nobody knows what happened, I want to get every single urine sample, blood sample, MRI, whatever it is. Yeah, and you got to get me out of here because I got to go. I got to go see her. I got to go see her right now. And so she quickly discharged me. And we went to the hospital. And on the way to the hospital, my husband and I talked about how this was going to go down. And so we did all the MRIs, we did all the tests. And finally, the doctor sat us down and said, look, the brain MRI shows that there's uncal herniation. And so that was clear to me what was going on. And so I told my family that, all right, this is what's going to happen. My body, I'm her mother. I brought her into this world. I'm going to be the one who's going to take that tube out. I'm going to remove the lines. We're going to bathe her. I'm going to hold her skin to skin. Victor's going to hold her skin to skin. You can stay if you want to. You don't have to. You can do whatever you want. But this was my chance to show my daughter my love. And so that's what we did. We bathed her. My husband, the nurses were angels. Angels. They were absolutely amazing. And they taught us there on the bottom right, Victor is using baby oil to take off the tape gently so we don't rip her skin. And there, the nurses had asked us if we wanted an infant loss photographer to come. And I was like, what? Like, that sounds really weird. As you saw, like when I think of a professional photographer, I'm thinking about, people taking pictures at a wedding, like you saw in the beginning. And I initially said no, and they said, please, you don't ever have to look at them. You can, you don't even have to pay for it. And again, the angels that they were guided me. And I said yes, and thank God I did, because this is the most beautiful portrait I have of my daughter. And every single one of my family members held her before I did, because I wanted them to hold her, but I wanted to be able to hold her skin to skin. And so my sister, my brother, everybody, and this is my friend Rini, and she held her too. And this is a very poignant, important picture, as you will see towards the end of our talk here. And I finally held her skin to skin. It was excruciating, but these pictures that Todd Hochberg from Touching Souls Photography took are indeed a love story. And of course, can't take the physician out of me, even though I'm a mom. And at some point, this was May 10th, 2008, it was Saturday night. And it was getting close to midnight. And I noticed that she was starting to get a little dusky. And I said, maybe it's time. And my husband said to me, you know what? Why don't we just wait a little bit longer? Because, sweetie, I want you to have a Mother's Day. Again, great blessing there. And so we did. And I held her. And in this picture, the doctor is coming to tell us to listen to her heart. And then she said, time of death, 12:39 a.m. And I said, that's my time of birth. And that's what that face, that little look on my face is there. Very interesting indeed. And at that point, I thought, wow, I was born for this moment. The fact that my birth time and her death time were the same, I don't believe in coincidences. And this was the two of us at the end. And so that night, going home was hard. Going home was really hard. Leaving her at the hospital was really hard. And Elizabeth McCracken wrote a book called An Exact Replica of a Figment of My Imagination about her situation when she had a stillbirth. And she says it really nice, really well here, where she says, for us, what was killing was how nothing had changed. We'd been waiting to be transformed, and now here we were back in our old life. And 10 years ago, that quote really, really rang true for me. And it meant something different in the transformation than what it means to me today. That experience of losing Rhea catapulted me into my spiritual journey. But fast forward 2 months, I was at the end of my training. And not at the end of my training, end of my leave for the C-section for my healing. And I had to start my July 1st, I had to start my 3rd year of fellowship. And so I had Rhea at the same hospital that I was training in. And I came back July 1, and I had a little album of pictures of her that I wanted to share with some of the nurses who had taken care of me before I gave birth to Rhea. So I went up to the labor and delivery floor and or prenatal place where they do the ultrasounds. And I walked into the room, and one of the nurses sees me, and she immediately just bursts into tears. And she's like, oh my gosh, I heard what happened, and I heard that you'd refused a C-section, and I knew that couldn't be true. And I was like, what? And it shook me. And I was like, oh my goodness. And then later that day, my doctor called me to check on me, to see how I was doing. She said, Tisha, how are you doing? And I said, doc, this thing happened today. I saw this nurse, and she said that she had heard she heard that I'd refused a C-section. And I said, and she said, Tisha, no, you didn't refuse a C-section. I said, let's go. And you said, okay. I said, I know. So how on earth would anyone ever get that idea? And of course, in a university hospital, we know that every single death goes through a morbidity and mortality conference. And I know that they had done that for Rhea as well. And I couldn't even handle the thought that the result of the morbidity mortality conference would be, oh, the mom refused a C-section. That's why this happened. So I'm talking to my doctor, and I say, doc, if you thought that I really need to have a C-section earlier, you should have said something. And she said, Tisha, if you want somebody to have heart surgery and they don't want to have it, what are you gonna do? And I said, well, I'm going to tell them why I think they need heart surgery. I'm going to tell them the risks and the benefits of the surgery. And I'm going to tell them what I think would happen if they didn't do the surgery. And then I'll give them my strongest recommendation. There were no risks or benefits discussed with me about anything. And she said, Disha, I would never say that a patient refused anything because that puts blame on the patient. If anything, I would say that they declined. And you know, there are ladies out there who do refuse C-sections and then they take it out on their babies. And I was like, you should have said something if this is what you thought. And she said, Disha, I think about you every single day. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about you. How are you doing physically? And I said, fine. I hung up the phone. I went to medical records and I got my records. And on my discharge summary right there, it said the patient was counseled to have a C-section and she declined. This was signed 1 month after Ria had passed. So people ask me about, I'm going to see this a little bit better here. People ask me about, what did you do? What did you do? What did you do? And what I did was exactly what most people think to do, right? I sued her because I didn't know what else to do. And it took us 5 years to get to trial. It took us 2.5 weeks in a courtroom. For the 5 years, we couldn't talk to anybody about what happened. We had experts from all over the country saying how in the 21st century, this should never happen in a large university hospital in a big city. And then we lost the trial. And so people ask me, wow, would you do it again? And I say, no, I wouldn't do it again. Do I regret it? No, I don't regret it, but I would never recommend it to anyone. And so this is where the topic of the sacredness of the physician-patient relationship comes in. Boy, have I learned a lot of lessons. You know, when we're in training, I don't know about you guys, but I heard so many times, make sure you document well, because if it's not in the chart, it didn't happen. Well, the question to me was, just because it is in the chart, did it really happen? And we're in an era of defensive medicine. And right here, I have this note to myself, defensive medicine versus heart-centered medicine. And when patients come to us because they trust us, because they want our guidance, they want our help. When I saw that written, when that nurse said that to me, I felt so betrayed by my doctor. And then as we move forward, the lessons that I learned was 90% of malpractice lawsuits actually go in favor of the physician. I didn't know that. Number 2, it's all about money. I wasn't in this for money. I just didn't want her to do this to anyone else in the future. And so a lot of lessons were learned, and that the physician-patient relationship is indeed a sacred one. And it's not about you versus me. It's about honoring that relationship and honoring that what we're doing is sacred work. And so through the years, like I said, this whole experience has catapulted me into my spiritual journey, and I've done a lot of spiritual work. And I can honestly say that there are tremendous blessings and lessons learned from Ria. And the first one being, love doesn't start with birth and it doesn't end with death, because I love her just as much today as I did the day I got my pregnancy test, my positive pregnancy test, and just as much as I did on the day that I had the privilege of holding her as her soul left her body. And having that experience and knowing this to my core, that love doesn't start with birth and it doesn't end with death, helps me have these discussions about grief with my patients in an entirely different way than I would have otherwise. I have a strong belief that everything happens for a reason and a purpose, and it's serving me. I realize that life is truly a drama and that I play a lot of different roles. And this was one role, mother of Ria. I also play the role of the physician and a mother to 2 more beautiful daughters and a wife and a sister. I also learned that at every crossroads in life, we have a choice to take the road of love or fear and hurt. And I learned a lot about the role of karma and right action. When I think about my doctor, I think about why she said what she said, why she did what she did. And I realized she did it from fear. She was in fear. And I was in fear. I was in fear that someone out there would blame me or that she was blaming me for my daughter's death. And both of us taking action from fear doesn't ever lead to a good outcome at all. It was torture for me. It was torture for her, even though at the end she did win the trial, but I know it wasn't easy for her during those times. And so we always have to think, right, before we take any action. Are we in a place of love, or are we in a place of fear, anger, or hurt, or pain? Because if we take action from that place, nothing good can happen. The other thing that I learned was making the decision that something good must come from this entire experience. And I chose not to have a victim mindset. So I'm hoping today that as I share this with you, that something good comes from that experience. And I hope that it does. And I chose to see challenges as an opportunity to learn. And most of all, I choose to see the collateral beauty and the grace during the difficult times. So those nurses that helped us that night are all of our amazing friends that came to visit us. 6 months after, in December, I got a package from the Chicago Botanic Garden saying that there was a lot of people who had donated money in honor of our Ria for there to be a tree that will forever be at the Chicago Botanic Gardens. And there's Rini. Rini spearheaded the entire tree situation gift. And there's the tag that's there forever. And so this was May 10th, and I showed you this picture earlier of Rini and myself, and Rini holding my baby, her niece. And fast forward 4 years, March 5th, 2012, I get the phone call from her that her first son, Gavin, didn't have a heartbeat. Coincidence? No. I knew exactly what to do. I knew exactly where I needed to be. And I knew exactly what needed to happen. I packed my things. My husband put me on a plane, and I went right to Dallas from New York. And I had that privilege and honor of holding her baby, Gavin, as his soul left his body, and to comfort her. I promise I'm finishing up in 2 minutes here. So through the years, I've done a lot of spiritual work, and one of the works was talking about that higher power and what is it to us. And so I believe that the higher power is the basis of who we are. It is the constant of our being that we forget about by the birth of the ego mind. I believe that this power is love in its purest essence and is present in all of us. It is our common denominator. We can choose to tap in and connect to this love anytime, anywhere. When we are connected to this constant presence, fears, worries, and doubts evaporate, and we become rooted in certainty. We are certain in our truth and in our light and in our dharma. Our ego mind will help us survive, but it is only in our essence of love will we thrive and live our authentic life. It is through this connection and in the recognition of truth that we will be able to heal ourselves and be the witness of health as our natural well-being. And just to finish off, let me see here. Thanks. Just to finish off, we've all been through a lot in this last year with COVID as being healthcare providers. And every week at Saratoga Hospital, we have a COVID call for the physicians, and we do this January. We started doing a pause just to remember all the souls that were lost, and so they asked me to just lead the pause for 2 minutes this past week. And so I just want to read to you what I wrote, because I think it may serve. I hope it serves. And so I said, we as a country and as a community have lost more lives than we ever thought. And the interactions that we have had with patients and their families have been a struggle, to say the least. I just wanted to take this moment to remind all of us why we went into medicine in the first place. We wanted to heal. We wanted to help people. The oath we took at our medical school graduations was to first do no harm. Remember, just because some of our patients die, it does not mean that we have not kept our promise. We certainly cannot save everyone. One of the most important privileges that we have as healthcare providers is to bear witness to not only health and recovery, but also to a soul's divine transition as it leaves the body. To stand with compassion as a family member expresses their frustration because they cannot see their loved one, or give our presence in a patient's last moments when no one else is allowed to be present. This is sacred work. I will even go as far as to say it is God's work. So let us take a moment in remembrance for all those who have suffered, including patients, their families, physicians, nurses, all the healthcare workers. And let's just bow our heads for a second in humility and honor for the privilege of doing this meaningful and very sacred work. Om Shanti. And you can ask me anything.
Om Shanti. So, Dr. Disha, thank you so much for your open and honest and really, really powerful sharing. And I feel we should just go right into that silence. Yeah. And I'll just lead with a few thoughts and try to take us all into the essence of what it is that you were able to touch in yourself, that your daughter was able to touch in you, and experience that we all have that power of love within us, and we can connect to the power of love of the higher power as well. So thank you for sharing that very personal story, and I'm sure it touched everyone. Om Shanti. Using the depth of feeling present in this moment. I go deep within. Deep within the soul, the eternal being. The part of us that is beyond birth and beyond death. The essence of love. Stepping out of the scenes of the drama to connect to that which is real, that which is true within myself. Feeling the depth of love of the soul. Feeling the interconnection of I, the soul, all the souls of the world, my brothers. Being light. Being love. It's that light and that love that makes me free. Free from any sorrow. Free from suffering. Free to see the best, the good in any situation. Knowing this drama of life moves forward, it marches on, and I have the power to choose the path I walk. I am in my depth, deep spiritual love, connected always to source, to the ocean of love. And that source is always there. It's my strength. Keeps me full of love. Full of love that overflows into everything I do, into every relationship I have. Love flows. Love flows, and love heals the heart. I just spend 1 minute in silence, absorbed in the depth of love. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you, Dr. Disha, for such an authentic and honest sharing. And thank you, Marilyn, for such a powerful and loveful meditation. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And we'll meet everyone next Sunday again at 8 p.m. Thank you, and have a good night and have a nice week ahead. Om Shanti.